This is Mick Strawn, the production designer for Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the Fat Boys videos with Freddy, all kinds of stuff that you've watched before, and you're listening to Elm Street Radio.
It's Friday, Freddy Krueger Friday. Your co-host Deandra here.
And Paige.
And we'd like to welcome you to this week's episode of Elm Street Radio. We have a super cool guest on this week who you maybe and totally should have heard of if you love A Nightmare on Elm Street, because he has been such a huge influence, and I cannot wait to see what he has to say. But Mick Strawn, production designer for some of the most fan-beloved Nightmare films, Nightmare 3 and Nightmare 4.
Yes, you know what, I'm so excited that he is on today. You know, he has such a huge, expansive career. He's done Blade, he's done Boogie Nights, he's done the Hercules movies, of course, Nightmare 3 and 4, but one of my personal favorites, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. His career, his career is just so amazing, and I'm excited to talk to him today and kind of hear what he has to say and hear some stories.
I'm right with you there, Paige, and I know that you created your own version of the Freddy Snake several years ago, and he made that Freddy Snake scene a possibility.
I'm fairly certain he wasn't using popsicle sticks, a glue gun, and styrofoam board to make their Freddy Snake, like how I made mine. And his career is just so great, and his art is just amazing, and I just can't wait to talk to him.
Me too. Before we talk to the legendary Mick Strawn, there's some A Nightmare on Elm Street news for all of you. Flashback Weekend happening in August in Chicago. Holy crap, what a convention. If you aren't a Nightmare on Elm Street fan, this is pretty much something you can't miss unless you have other obligations like a symphony with your boyfriend.
Yes. Sorry I can't be at Flashback, Elm Street fans. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there, but, you're going to get to see the lovely Deandra and all of the rest of the crew.
Yeah, and we wish you could be there, Paige, and but you know what? You'll be at Scarefest, and you'll make up for it doubly by being your fabulous self.
Why, thank you.
And so, Flashback has the A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 tickets on sale for the screening happening that Saturday, August 5th. You can go onto their website and you can purchase your weekend passes. It's available for the weekend passes and the ultimate package, which is basically, I think they're VIP. It's only available for those two packages. And right now the options through the e-commerce buying are to buy the tickets and the weekend passes. But if you've already purchased your weekend pass, you can go ahead and call Flashback Weekend. They have a number there for you to reach out to. Today, they also announced Paula Shaw, known as Mrs. Voorhees from Freddy vs. Jason. She has been added to the lineup for Flashback. And there is some A Nightmare on Elm Street reboot, quote-unquote reboot news that's recently come back out again. It was published in an article a couple of days ago, but this first came out in 2015, I believe. Apparently on IMDb, there is a synopsis on A Nightmare on Elm Street film. Not a whole lot there for it, except that David Leslie Jones of Orphan and The Conjuring 2 is supposed to be the film's writer. And here is the synopsis. It is something that sounds like one of the books, like it could be in one of the books, but I'm not sure how I feel about it as a film. You guys decide. It is basically about this guy, Brenton Higgins, who is appearing in other people's dreams, has no idea what's going on, and that he's the illegitimate son of Freddy Krueger. He moves back to Elm Street, and he discovers all this secret stuff about his past, and he comes into a collision course with Freddy. And then there's this government agency who's after his powers, and they want his gift, but they don't know that they're going to run into Freddy Krueger, but with hell to pay. Ooh, I'm not too sure about that synopsis, if it is even real, which I kind of highly doubt that it is, but ooh.
I'm not sold on it. I'm really, every now and then these stories come out about how the reboot is going to be made, and this was from 2015, and last year they were talking about how they were going to reboot Dream Warriors, and I feel like it's all just theories at this point, but that story alone is not something that I would want to watch. It's not something that I would really want. I think that they need to go the back end, the backstory plot line, show the Springwood slasher and show kind of the seediness, kind of like how, the fan films have done with, the backstory. And I think that's something that Warner needs to really produce and look into. Not these generic slash and grab stories that they're coming out with.
It almost sounds like a Twin Peaks take on A Nightmare on Elm Street, because something mysterious and supernatural is happening, and so government agents are after whatever this mysterious thing is. It's like, what are they going to send Agent Dale Cooper in to take care of business? It's I mean, it just sounds really ridiculous. I can't really imagine watching this movie. Like I said, it sounds like it could be one of the novelization stories. Would make sense. Or even if there was a whole new reboot franchise, like this was one of the later sequels. A little bit hard to imagine, but based upon the way that the story is going, it just sounds like something that wouldn't be a start to something new. And I'm with you there, Paige. Getting that backstory, taking it to those dark roots, showing him with these kids and how he did it. And if they decide to go with the family man angle, or if they decide to go with the loner angle, as long as they keep the core values of Freddy and the story and what he symbolizes, I think there could be a heck of a great movie about that Springwood slasher element.
I agree. And someone who has worked on the Freddy backstory and has worked with, Freddy's nightmares and No More Mr. Nice Guy was our first guest.
Yes. Yes. We are going to bring you into our discussion with the legendary Mick Strawn. I am excited for the stories. I know Paige has mentioned how excited she is, and so let's get into it. Here we go. Oh boy, do we have a treat for you this week. Mr. Mick Strawn is here. He was the art director on A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and the production designer for Freddy's Nightmares, the Fat Boys music video, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Welcome to Elm Street Radio, Mick.
Thank you very much. I'm here. I'm ready.
Awesome. I'm so excited that you're on. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today? Everything going well?
It's going fabulous, especially being as you guys have called.
Aw. So I'm gonna jump right in and start asking you some questions. I'm like super excited that you are on. One of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about with you is because you have such an amazing career in this industry, and you've been through all of the changes. You've seen the practical effects, the CGI, back to the practical effects, and I personally love the practical effects. I feel like CGI it's starting to die off, and it had its moment. But now with like low budget horror, like indie films, shows like American Horror Story, Walking Dead, all of that, practical effects are coming back again. How do you feel like practical effects versus CGI?
Well, I'll tell you, I feel really strongly about this, and sometimes I wonder if it's just because I'm an old fart, or if it's because possibly I know what I'm talking about. But very hard to tell. The thing is when we were working with effects, and I consider the stuff that we did with effects, like kind of the height of practical effects. I mean, to that period. And then there was a long period where recently practical effects have come back with a huge bang. I mean, look at Roger Miller's help me out here. The Australian Frank Miller's
Frank Miller, yes.
Yeah, his most recent Road Warrior film was astounding. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that CGI had returned to a support as opposed to being a primary effect. And that's kind of where it belongs, to tell you the truth. It was, I said this originally, and I still stand by it, that one of the finest CGI films was one that was done at the very, very beginning of it. It was called Forrest Gump.
Oh my goodness, yes, yeah.
And part of the reason is they used it. It was subservient to the story. It was like the last. It was just used to fill in areas where it was really good at it. You know what I mean? I mean, it was kind of small and beautiful. And then it became...
Exactly. It wasn't overused.
Exactly. And I have to tell you the truth, is if you went through the 80s in films that were using effects, and that's virtually everything that I did, the thing that you worried about first, the things that you discussed and had meetings about and did storyboards about and experimented with, you wound up having effects sequences that were 3 sentences on the page, that were days and days and hours of working it out and trying to figure out how we're going to do this based upon the limitations of what you had. And therefore, you had so much work going into these parts of the film that I think that it lost a lot when it went on and all you had to do is walk away and say, well, that didn't look right. We'll do it in post. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's the old, we'll fix it in post.
Oh, God, that's a big evil, big no-no.
How many times did I not want to just slam my head up against the wall and go, don't ever say that, please?
That's like the horrible words, like the worst words God. You could say is, we'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in post.
Well, you know what? It used to be that if you're working the practical effects and you couldn't you couldn't get it done on set because, let's face it, even the best, only, 75% of the stuff they were going, as a production designer, and I designed effects and was a production designer. And the one thing that I had to say about being a production designer is one way or the other, that always worked. Right? Sometimes the effects just did, for some reason they didn't work. And then you had to make it so that you could isolate it. And you'd say, well, as opposed to we'll do it in post, you would say things like, we'll do it as an insert shot.
Right.
So
we had an experience with that on our film. Our blood pump decided not to work.
Exactly. So right.
We're like, we'll just cut around it. Like we'll just run all over him, and we'll just cut to that. So
yeah, exactly. Well, and those things, and they're the thing is you would at the end of every film you have a set of shots that are done as inserts or done as sweeteners. I give you an example of this. When we did the sequence for the Freddy snake.
Yes, that's my favorite practical effect of all time.
That is
actually
the coolest thing ever.
It's my favorite one.
Well, let me look. at first I'm going to tell you something about it, and then we'll go back and we're going to go through that all the way through, so I can tell you how much work it really was, who was really involved. Because, oh my gosh, it's in a way I was a centralizing character on that, because a lot of it I set up with image engineering, because I was working with image engineering before, and we were setting up the effects, the mechanical effects, before I started in as the production designer. So one of the things that Peter Chesney and I had a problem with at the end of it is that we were down at his shop, and Rachel Talalay came in and said, well, we have this problem with that sequence, is that when it starts, it's underneath the carpet. When the creature, you hear shaking, the lights, kind of wink on and off.
Right, you see all the like rumbling under the ground, and
but the first shot
room is like, it's almost
right, and the first shot was the beginning of the snake moving across the floor.
Room, and
exactly, but here's the problem.
Right, I always wondered how you guys did that.
Well, it was, the whole thing was a track. And basically, if you think of a caterpillar with a whole bunch of football helmets on for each set of legs, and then pulled by a cable, and then consider that you set that up, and then you put walls and floors on top of that, so that when you pulled the cable, as the thing went along, it broke up the floor, then it broke up the wall, and then it disappeared. So that was all a channel that was built into a huge, complicated set that had double sets of walls, one set of walls to hold the channel, walls and floor, and then another set that was set in front of it that was meant to be broken up.
How did you
That's
even
so cool.
start to figure out how to create that effect? Because it looks so incredible without just using the practical effects. And where did you start on that to say, okay, this is how the wall has to crumble, this is how this has to flow through here?
Well, this is how, but that's where the experimentation comes in, and it was my idea that I was going to go through the plaster, and that we could set one wall in front of the track, and Peter Chesney came up with with how the track was engineered, and those were actually literally skateboard casters with football helmets put on top of them. So it was like and I think that maybe it was 6 or 7 of those in a row that were put in the channel and pulled by a cable. And one of the problems that we had was, in looking at all the footage, almost immediately the carpet started to float up, because the carpet was feeling the air of all that disruption underneath it. And when it floated up, it stopped having it kind of just looked like an earthquake. It didn't have the effect of a worm. So this is something that you have to vision. Go back and look at the shot, and from now on, you will think to yourself, wow, I'm watching a Clorox bottle. That's Peter and I are sitting around, and we were like, and I can't remember which one of us thought of it at first, but we were trying to think of a way to fix that, try and get the idea that you had something coming at you, right? And
right.
So what we did is we just went out and we got an oriental carpet at some thrift store and brought it back and threw it down on the ground, and I tied a Clorox bottle to a piece of rope and just put the camera real low and pulled the Clorox bottle underneath the carpet right at the camera, put a bunch of dust and crap on top of it, and it had this real straight arrow bump coming right towards you look. And that is the first thing you see. The first thing that you see of maybe a $300,000 rig altogether, with all the different segments and all the different departments and stuff. The very first thing you see is a 79-cent Clorox bottle.
I love it. I love it. That's
Amazing.
that's the stages of practical effects. I am obsessed with watching the behind the scenes Nightmare on Elm Street 3
Oh my God, me
footage
too.
on YouTube all the time. Like, obsessed with it. And one of the things that I love about it is when the stunt double is falling on the carpet, there's paper cups.
I was just going to talk about that. Everyone's setting up the paper cups, and it's like, book, 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 and then you like put the thing on top. That's so funny.
But that's
it's so clever.
That's practical effects. Like, that is an effective thing that people don't realize that's what you do.
I'll tell you one of the best opticals in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is when Heather Langenkamp falls through the chair.
I was just going to ask about that too. How did that happen?
This is so cool. So basically what we did is we built a chair that had a slot in the middle of it that you could pass a human being through, right? And so what you did, and you have to look at the way that the shot is framed and think that you don't see really the bottom of the fabric in the chair, right? And it's because you're just getting to the point to where you can see here that if you'd seen the shot without the optical that's in it, and it's the tiniest optical you've ever seen, she falls and goes through. You would see her come out the bottom of the chair and go back down, all the way down to a pad on the ground. But you can't see it because they just replaced that one little spot underneath the chair, in between the floor and the bottom bump of the chair. Is just this little tiny optical. And it's so
seamless.
And it's so seamless. And it's seamless. And see, and I'm working in a theme here. It's seamless because 90% of it is actually practical, and you're using your optics to support that, And
it's pretty amazing because this was, the 80s, and to be able to accomplish, I mean, it was the golden age, like you said, but even still thinking about certain limitations, but being able to accomplish that in that time is pretty amazing.
To give you such a, Dreamcast was doing opticals on it, and they, at that time, for instance, Joey, who, I got to tell you something, and I think that it's because part of the reason that Rodney Eastman is not as strongly into being with the Elm Street group is all the torturing that we did to that guy on that film. Oh my God. Oh, geez, you have no idea. Like you see him over the pit, right?
Yeah.
In Freddy's Hell, you see him like racked over the pit. So he's laying there, on cables basically, so that we can't see any of that, So it's not like he has a comfortable position. He's laying there on top of cables that are crisscrossed, so that we can't see any of that. And they actually, one day I walked onto the set and somebody yells fire, and everybody leaves the Freddy's Hell set, and I just happened to walk in, and there's Joey's trying to get out, and there's a light underneath him that's smoking.
Oh no!
Oh my gosh!
Oh my gosh!
So we had to run.
Rodney.
Oh yeah. Well, how about that? How about for hours and hours and I mean, I think it took nearly 20 hours on our reshoot to shoot the stop motion of his chest.
20 hours for the little slashes on his chest when he's laying there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for those little slashes? Oh, yeah. I mean, that was done in real time with him there.
He had to sit through 20 hours of
Yeah.
just, wow.
Yeah,
That
and
is
the
like
thing
mind blowing.
It is.
oh, it's and the thing is and nobody really, and this is a thing. Of course, nobody thought about the fact that he'd have to pee in the middle of that. So we pulled him out of there, and he was.
Got to remember those potty breaks.
Yeah, gotta remember those. Well, it's funny because Rachel Dalley and I were standing there trying to figure out just how much we owed the guy at the end of it for every horrible I
would have been like, I want top billing.
Over Robert Englund.
You know what?
I would have been like, over Heather Langenkamp and Robert Englund, I want top billing.
I want way over top.
If he'd asked for it on that day, we would have had to have given it to him. Well, also got to think of this is the way that we did the Freddy's Hell tunnel behind him, right? When you see the
like the fire coming up underneath him and all that.
When the bed falls down into that and everything.
Oh,
right.
God, that's such a beautiful shot.
That's horizontal. That's not vertical. That's on its side, right? Shot outside with a 40 by 40 backlit blue screen that took 60 fluorescent units, built onto the wall at the outside of the warehouse, and then DreamQuest put a huge transparent green screen over it. We then put the floor of the set up horizontally, and then hung the guy again. Most of the night he was hung in his X.
He probably came out of that movie with longer arms and legs than he had.
Right. Oh my God, he had to have. I swear to God, towards the end of the film, man, I couldn't even look at his face without looking guilty.
Yeah, I will never look at Dream Warriors the same. I will always feel bad for Ron Eastman.
Me too. That tear was real. He didn't just draw it on his face. It was permanent.
Yeah, how can you
what
not,
was
right?
up with that tear? What does anybody really even know? Was that like for him to symbolize emotion?
He's just
because
really
he couldn't
sad.
talk, or...
Yeah, I think
just.
Well, it's a good thing he kept his mouth. A good thing he kept his mouth shut because we were torturing him all the time. I wouldn't have wanted to hear the screams to go with everything else, right?
So I have a really funny question for you that I just thought of right now. And so
Go for it.
I know that you weren't in charge of this, but who the hell was in charge of Nancy Thompson's Gray Streak?
Oh my God,
And
yes.
Why?
Who the hell is
why
this person?
did it flip? Like, why did it flip sides?
That was between the hairdresser, my sister, and God.
Like, I mean, it's
and my sister, God rest her soul, is gone. So that secret is being kept by the hairdresser and God alone.
I will find
Well,
her.
hold on. We hopefully did your sister justice in our film when we tried to explain it as the gray won't cover that side. So we were trying to connect the dots.
Yeah, and you know what? It's true. We do have a real story to back that up because the one gentleman in our fan film who played Nancy's friend man thing, he had a small gray spot in the back of his head. And I was like, oh my God, does dye not work? And he said, nope. And I was like, there it is. Yeah, Eureka.
Here's the actual problem was this. It's when you see something like that in general in a film where you say this is a solution somewhere that came up by committee, and you can almost see where the end of the discussion was, right? It was like Heather Langenkamp looked a little too young to be taken seriously as a doctor, right?
Right. She was very, very young.
Yeah,
she was very young. So so the discussion went at the time, and I remember the beginnings of the discussion. I'm just telling you, I can see why it ended that way, because then they made her hair a little grayer to kind of like And then that made her look ridiculously old. So
should have drawn some crow's feet on her eyes. I'm sure she
yeah,
would have appreciated that.
Yeah, you see, you already got the idea of where I'm going.
Yeah, so they were like, okay, so I get it. They were like trying to like age her up. They weren't really trying to follow the canon of when she left Nightmare 1, she had a gray streak.
Just make her look old.
Like, let's just make her look older.
Make her a hag. Nancy's
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just telling you what the discussion was. As to how they ended up there, I'm pretty sure it was a committee that eventually just ran out of time.
Speaking
but no,
of,
I love that. I love that there was like a committee deciding what they were going to do with the gray streak for Nancy Thompson. That makes me feel so much better.
I can't believe there was a committee for
well, it's not like it's not like there's a committee. It's just that you have to think of a group of people, maybe not as the committee to put gray hair on Nancy, right? You have to think of it as just the way everybody kind of makes group mind decisions and how some of them just plain go wrong. You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
I love it.
I follow you. I really want to ask about, speaking of all of these practical effects and all the awesome things that happen, Nightmare 4, which the entire crew and cast put together over that
got
writer's
poisoned
strike.
by my sister. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, wherever you want to go. I just wanted to know more about that junkyard and Freddy Resurrection because it has baffled me now. I'm a little bit of a newer Nightmare fan. I think I became a fan probably about, oh my gosh, what was it, like 10 years ago is when, over
Right.
Dream. Okay, so I'm a newbie because I'm 24. And when I first watched that scene, I was like, oh my God, how are they making this Freddy's skin come on and his lungs and his organs swell up? Like how and then the dog pee, like there's so much that's happening in that resurrection scene.
First of all, you have to understand how this stuff works. This stuff works you sit down with the director, you sit down with people that are kind of involved with the overall sequence, like me and the director and in that case, Pete Von Schally, who did the storyboard, right? And you come up with a series of shots that explains it, just out of your head, how you want it to be. And then you have to break it down with how we can possibly do it, right? And then people who have in charge of the whole overall thing, like me, I have to say, okay, well, that's the set at the junkyard. That's the set in the ground. That's the that's the crack in the earth as it is in the ground at the junkyard, which is kind of a different thing than the junkyard itself. And then we take that set and you have to say to yourself, well, now then that's going to have to be manipulated in several ways because it's got people working like with heaters in order to melt the wax Freddy and, the little reverse poles to pull all the bones together and all the rest of that. So that was a series of the same looking sets that were spread all over the warehouses that we were using as stages. And then there was the other thing is just the crack of the earth that's over that set, which was another set that was put on the stage, including various cars that were all over our parking lot up there that were representing different spots in the auto junkyard itself. But then there's the massive actual set, and that was an actual set. It was a set that was an acre.
Wow.
In order to get that, like when you come up, Freddy Kincaid opens the trunk, and immediately there's a over his shoulder crane shot that looks out over the junkyard, and then later on they used the same point of view for a shot of, the crack in the ground and everything. That's
Right.
not an optical. That's actually a shot.
Wow.
Did you put
I mean,
that? Was that like you put that the whole scene there with all those cars and everything all together on that acre?
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, those cars actually the idea of the cars actually started with me at my desk figuring out what the shots would be and taking just huge masses of like little Hot Wheels and then crushing them with a hammer and then stacking them with glue. And so I
read that. I read that you were hot gluing Hot Wheels together, and I was like, wow, like that's crazy.
You do that, and then 6 weeks later, you're doing it in real life.
That's so awesome.
Tell me I didn't really have a great time on that film.
No, that's awesome.
I love hearing these stories, and especially how like much of an impact you have on so many of these iconic images. And speaking of your impact, so you put together the concept for when when Alice is driving and she runs into the tree, but there's really nothing there, and Freddy's in the road.
Oh, this is a much better story than that.
Oh my God! Bring it on! I want to hear it all.
Okay, so we had started the series. We had started the sequence, and somebody came up with the idea of the dream loop. And I cannot to this day remember if Groundhog Day came first. But anyway, the idea was that we're in this dream loop, and here's the weird thing about not having a finished script as we're going along, but or having a script that we say is finished, but we've already shot completely different shit. Completely, just kind of like very like an off-road vehicle, just going, around wherever he wants, right? So now we're in the loop, and as we are in the loop, we are having meetings in fact, I specifically remember this meeting. We were having a meeting with the stupid discussion title of how the hell do we get out of this loop?
I love these committees that just pop up over A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well, these are meetings. And this was like a meeting from hell. This is like we had gotten ourselves into this loop, and all we had, we kept having them coming out to the truck, and we finally had to stop doing it because we didn't know how we were going to end it, right? So we're sitting in a meeting. We have Rachel and Peter and Bob Shea and Rennie Harlan. And Rennie Harlan is taking credit for this, but he didn't do it. You can ask Rachel. And we're at this meeting. We're going around, and the meeting had gone into its third hour of what the hell how do we get out of the loop? How do we stop the truck? Right? So basically what we have is we have them going down the road in the truck, and we want to indicate it's a dream. And we went through some stupid ideas, but we were trying to, like, in the third hour, we had gotten into the idea somehow that it was a plane. What? And that,
oh God,
she was, yeah. Tell me that you're not tired and you haven't been on a film too long when you come up with a plane. Okay, so we're in this plane, and he's the pilot. Dan is the pilot, and she's in back. Alice is in back of the plane, and Freddy is the Dan is the pilot, and Freddy is the stewardess that comes into the. And I mean, I'm telling you, just complete the worst shit you have ever heard in your life. And I'm sitting in the meeting, and I thought, and I said this. I said, well, if we're gonna do that, we might as well just hit nothing. And I said it because I was tired and I didn't care anymore. And then I went, holy shit, and everybody at the table just went, stop. And they all looked at me, and Griff Ruggles, who was transportation coordinator, sitting right across from me, and he goes, "So, how would you do that?" And I just went, and I thought to myself, and often, and I still do it to this day. Often I will start a sentence and not know how I'm going to finish it. So you and I are both hearing it at the same time. So I thought to myself, how would we wind up doing that? And I told Griff across the table, I said, what if we get a huge tractor and tie a cable to the front of the truck and run the truck to the end of the cable, tie the other end to a tractor, and put the cameras all there where the end of it is. And eventually that's what we ended up doing.
So that's how you got that shot where it like collapses inside of itself.
Well, it was a lot more complicated than that. I mean, it got it.
Well, no, I know, but I just thinking like that
was exactly
the awesomeness.
That was my thought. That was the thought behind it there at the table. That's basically how we came up with it, and I still love the idea of it today. I heard many years later on, I worked with a director on something called Advanced Guard, and he worked with Rennie Harlan all the time, and he said that Rennie Harlan had always taken credit for that, but getting to know me on the set, he'd come up and said, "You're the one that thought of that, aren't you?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm going to have to admit that."
I have to say, you guys were really, you set the bar so high for practical effects in films after Dream Warriors and Dream Master.
But you got to think of it this way: we did a good job on the first one, Dream Warriors. See, and I get them confused. It's Dream Warriors and then Dream Master, right?
Right.
I always knew them only as Nightmare 3 and Nightmare 4. But at the time, when we did the third one, our competition was the fact that we had to do something amazing because horror films didn't have a third at that point. You know what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Right, like you guys really did set the bar for everything. You were the first to really have a third.
We were the first to have a third, and the thing is there were many things that were involved in that. For instance, there was discussions that we had about Freddy. There's a huge problem with Freddy. He comes in your dreams, and he's scary in your dreams, but that becomes the gig. You know what I'm saying? As soon as somebody goes to sleep, Freddy's going to be there. And we made him a comedian because we needed to put depth into that concept. Because otherwise it just becomes the same thing again and again, and you have to think of what it was you had. What are we working with here that we can really capitalize on? And of course it's Robert. Robert's a funny freaking guy.
That is so true because, that's a thing that the fans talk about a lot is why did Freddy become so funny? But really, he had this personality from the very beginning.
Yeah, what else? And right, so why don't you lean towards that? And part of the problem that we kind of saw with 2 was that every time everybody goes to sleep, there's Robert, and he's horrifying. But it was too much of a pattern, right? It's a little bit, it's a very limiting
predictable
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only is it predictable, let's put it this way. You eventually have to go to sleep. See? So Robert wins no matter what. So to a certain extent, we did 2 things on there. We made him a stand-up comedian. And believe me, it was absolutely 100% intentional, and we all knew it. We made him a stand-up comedian, and we sort of started to limit his abilities a little bit. We had to find ways to make him more killable.
Right, like almost like he was like trapped. Like he couldn't reach them as much as he could in the first and second.
Yeah, right. You had to limit it. We had to find ways to limit it, and we had to make him more interesting when you saw him. You know, see, the thing is just seeing Freddy in the first two is kind of enough to like really scare you. But then after a while, it's all Freddy all the time, and I have a feeling that had we not made him a comedian and made him a little bit less ominous, that we wouldn't have made it into as many sequels as we did.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think that you guys in Dream Warriors ended up making him a little bit more likable.
Yeah, right, and we made him a character. We made him let's face it. He actually takes over the role that Vincent Price had for the 40s and the 50s. He became the character and the face of horror.
He did.
You are 100%.
And Freddy to this day is just,
it's exactly what he is. It's like replacing him with what's his face didn't really make all that many people happy, right?
Well, I think
you're talking about Jackie Earle.
Yeah, Jackie.
Poor
Jackie. Jinx.
Yeah, I know everybody dumps on Jackie. Sorry about that. Sorry, Jackie.
Jackie is a really good actor, but I felt one of the things I felt about him is everyone's like, oh, he's scary again. And, the thing about Freddy is, even from the beginning, he might have been scary, but he always had that little bit of personality to him. And I felt that in the remake, he lacked personality, not just his own personality, but personality, period. He was just playing there to be scary, and that wasn't Freddy.
To me, it's why the Michael Myers franchise and the what's the other one?
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Why they are such a different beast than the Nightmare.
We talk about this often. We talk about why the Nightmare franchise is so popular and resonates with so many people.
Look at all the different people. And the thing is, every one of those films had a different stuntman in the, just right there, that interchangeability kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Right, because it's like Robert is not just a man in a mask. Like, he's not just...
I have to tell you something hilarious. So I am sitting outside of the stage with the Fat Boys, right? And we had the stage that we're doing Freddy's Nightmares, right? And and we are sitting. And I cannot tell you how absurd this was, because for some reason the promo guy had come by with these scooters, these little teeny tiny scooters, and all of us. Me and the Fat Boys are sitting out in the parking lot, all of us on a different scooter, right? That were so small that we could have swallowed them with our assholes if we tried, And we're sitting here, and they started talking about who was the baddest. Was it Jason, or was it Michael Myers, or was it Freddy? And the discussion went on for 10 minutes. And it was hilarious, because there was an angle to it that it seemed like they were being really serious about it, right? And finally, I forget who the shortest, heaviest one is, and he wasn't saying much about it for the longest time. And finally, he just gets up and he kind of throws his little scooter over, and he says, "Here's the thing, man. I got to tell you. This is the thing. See, Freddy, he gets you in the dreams. And how are you going to fight that, huh? How are you going to fight that?" And we all had like, oh, okay. You win, man. That's right. So he gets you in your dreams.
Oh, my God.
Like, there's no stopping that.
No.
It kind of like he was the last word. It was such the last word, they threw his scooter down. This is the
major point.
Word.
It was like the
major point.
Before the mic drop came the scooter throw.
It was so hilarious. I thought I was going to die.
Oh,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Gosh, that making that music video had to be so much fun to walk around with to have those fat boys and have Robert walk, because I love that. I mean, to have Robert Englund as Freddy, like legitimately Freddy Krueger, rapping in this really fantastic music video is just like the greatest gift to mankind, other than the special effects in the Nightmare movies.
I did that one and the Dokken one. So
oh my god,
the Dokken had a great moment.
I was just gonna say, has anything happened on the Dokken one? Because that that's the one that we all love.
Wasn't there something with the wall with the guitar?
The wall was hilarious. The wall. There's something that's really well known in, if you're a stuntman, you will understand this, and stuntmen go, oh yeah, well of course, is that if you go through the standard breakaway wall, right? You know, if you walk into a wall, maybe that's made out of foam, and you're just going to break right through it, and you're going to come out the other side, you will land on your face every damn time. And here's why. Because your feet have been on your body since you were born. And they're the ones that found all the edges of the beds. And they're the ones that found the table legs. And you see, your brain goes, oh, dude, your brain goes, look, that's all foam. That's all that's nothing. We can go right through that. But your feet go, hey, you remember that table leg? That hurt. That hurt me. It's like you're the brain, you're way up there, right? So we're trying to explain that to the guitarist with the one with the skull on his guitar, right? And we go through this whole da-da-da. You have to be careful. You have to be careful. You have to. You're gonna come up to the wall, and when you come up to the wall, you're gonna trip the first time. So what we want to do is we want you to go through a couple of pieces of foam or something first without the guitar, just so that you can get used to it. And he kind of like, he said that we didn't know what we were doing. So he gets back, cameras roll, everything rolls. He gets back and he decides he's just going to hit it at a run. And sure enough, right before he gets to the wall, his feet stop and his head goes straight through the wall. And as he comes out of the wall, he is already in the middle of a flip going over. And for some unbelievable reason, he lands on his feet. He went all the way over and landed on his feet. And it looked really, really, when you were there, you knew that he had no idea that was going to happen. He had the most shocked look on his face. But when they cut it together, it looked awesome.
I have a fan question actually for you.
Sure.
From Jeremy, and he was wondering if you had the ability to go back and keep any item from any of the Nightmare films, what item would you keep?
Wow, I'm not a keeper of stuff. I don't.
You wouldn't keep the giant Freddy snake hanging up, popping out of the.
No.
Whatever happened to that?
Oh, guy, I don't know. I'm kind of a. I've worked on so many of these films that I just don't collect anything. It's not.
It's not about the stuff. It's about the end product.
See, it's about Here's the thing, and I think that my son is an artist too, and my wife is an artist, as you can tell. You've seen her stuff on the internet, her helmets. As soon as you're done with something as an artist, you're done with it. That's yesterday's thing.
That makes total sense. And I almost think that you probably look at the film as that's the thing I take away from it. This is the film that I made.
You see, the thing is in all honesty, I didn't get back into these films until my sister died 4 years ago. She died, and I was doing the eulogy, and after the eulogy, Rachel came up and we started to get into a discussion, and she goes, didn't she ever tell you that she was getting involved in all these groups, and she was involved in the making of that the film that, what's it called?
Never Sleep Again.
Never Sleep Again.
Never what?
Never Sleep Again, the documentary?
Right, Never Sleep Again, the documentary. She didn't tell me that was happening. Nobody did. And I always thought that I would have been there with the great stories. But
you would have been. I am so surprised. Like,
I'm not so. Well, she kind of blocked me in a way. We were kind of arguing at that point of her life, and the next thing you know, she died in air wreck, and that was it. But Rachel goes like this at her funeral. Rachel turns to me and goes, "You do know, because I've never seen you talk about it or anything, but you do know that the Freddy films and all the horror films that you did way back when are really, really popular these days." and I said, "Oh, a couple of people or something?" And she goes, "Oh no, it's thousands." And I didn't really think about it, but I moved up here. I mean, I closed everything up of our businesses down there, and moved up to be near my grandchildren. And now I've had a lot more time on my hands. And now that I've had time on my hands, I look in and I look at, wow, these films were super popular. And I hadn't seen any of them in, like Leatherface or in, oh my gosh, I was in the middle of so many of the just pivotal Critters. I built the town for Critters 2. I designed Leatherface. I did Mortal Kombat. I
did Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Well, that's a funny story in itself, and we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, I did all these films that had Witchboard. I mean, I just can't, just a huge list, and it was just me trying to make a living, and having found something that I was really, really happened to be good at. I never had any training in all this stuff. I mean, I can't even. It just happened because I was a friend of Jerry Olson's that we met in the elevator, or I never would have been the production designer.
So it was a literal elevator pitch for your.
Yeah, it was an elevator. It was what you've heard the phrase before.
Mm-hmm.
That it was the elevator pitch. I said, you know what? I know all the effects already. That I know how to build stuff. That that it would come out great, and by the top of I think that we had it was 8 floors high, and we got bottom to 8, and I was on. And oh, what a ride!
So you came back, and now you're seeing the impact that these films have had. Like now you're on Facebook, and I just discovered you on Facebook fairly recently. I've been doing stuff in the nightmare community online for since like 2009, I think. And so, what is your reaction to this whole phenomenon?
Well, you know what? I had to go back and look at the films. I had to look at the films and think of. I mean, a friend of mine said, put it best. He says, you were doing these films at a time when these were the big thing, and we knew that it was a big thing because there was a certain group of us that were always trying for the same films. I mean, I went to Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and the week that I decided to do Nightmare on Elm Street 4, I had to turn down Evil Dead 2. Oh, wow. So it was the same group of people. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the thing is, part of the reason the thing that most of these people, as a designer, the thing that I had was I knew construction, I knew effects, I knew design, I knew all the elements that were involved in it. And you have to do that. The Nightmare on Elm Streets are so involved. I mean, and you have to know optics, and you have to know all of it. I mean, my arguments with the guys at Dream Quest were just fucking epic. on Nightmare on Elm Street 4. It's funny. I saw that the guy from Dream Quest talking about the pullback shot on Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that footage?
I believe I have, but I think it's been a while.
Yeah. Well, he's talking about how, here we had a model and then we went to a mat here and we went to like an extended mat here and an extended mat here. And the thing is every time he extended it out was because I came and and would give him like another $15,000 out of my budget. But I spent $1 million on that damn film, so it just didn't make any difference. But he would be whining about his budget. I said, God, and finally, I'm fighting. I tried sending out memos that said, look, I want it to be the fucking world. You don't stop at like 2 miles or 100 miles or 500 miles or 1,000 miles. It's the fucking world. I want to see the whole thing. Flashing lights and everything. And so then I'd have to give him $15,000 and then he would move out a little bit further. And then they'd move out a little bit further. And finally, I got him to go out. I said, I want to see the curvature of the earth on either side of the frame. And we finally got out that far. And then I stopped hassling him.
It's such an amazing effect. It's like it doesn't compete with the 79-cent Clorox bottle, but it's such an amazing effect.
That Clorox bottle is going down in history.
The thing is that optical, it wouldn't have been right otherwise, because I would get arguments from him as like, oh, well, that's not real life, and the shot would have to be way longer, because of like in order to get out of the earth, it would take us 20 minutes to get all the way up there and all the rest of that. I said, oh, fuck, would you stop being so, like, whatever it is you are, and just listen to me. At some point, when you say you're tired and done, I want it to look like the world. Wow. And I finally got it. And he's still to this day, or I don't know. He could be dead for all I know. Anyway, he still says that I was wrong because I was out of proportion. Well, yeah, but you know what? I wasn't trying to be in proportion. I was just trying to do what I saw in my head.
It's like it's a horror movie. It doesn't have to make sense.
It doesn't have to.
There's so many plots.
It doesn't have to make sense.
It's about a guy who kills you in your dreams.
Your dreams.
Come on. Yeah.
You know what? And the thing is look, you guys have already gotten to know me, right? I'm stream of consciousness anyway, right? So using things like facts to me, yeah, that doesn't go.
But isn't that the very depth of being an artist anyways? Like, you're an artist. You want to create.
Yeah, you're
you
an
don't
artist,
have to necessarily think inside the box. You think outside of the box.
Thing is I think Jerry Garcia put it best. He said, your own personal style is the thing that you do wrong again and again and again and again until it's right. And that's exactly what it is. You're looking at something, and the things that create true art, the things that create style, the things that you remember are not the things that follow the rules, but they're the things that break the rules just right.
And I think that is the perfect point to close out this amazing discussion and interview with. That was incredible. I absolutely loved all these points. Thank you so much for coming on, Mick, to talk about these films and your influence. And you know what? If you ever want to come back on, we would love to, because I know you're filled with stories, and I know that Elm Street fans everywhere would just love to hear as many as possible. Like I say, I just got back into this in the last few years, and I would love to, I haven't been able to convince anybody that I'd make a good speaker at a con, but I think I would.
Oh my God, you would be amazing.
I would fight for you. My gosh. Let's get a committee together.
Let's start a committee. Yeah.
Well, all the little gray streaks that are here. This is the committee.
The problem is if we make a committee, you know what's the bad decision that's going to come up is they're going to find that it's cheaper for me just to ship my head to the convention and let it talk.
Oh my God.
That's a committee. Now that's a committee decision right there.
You know, I'm
And
just envisioning
and
that
you know
scene
what the
in
head
it.
would have on it? Do you know what the head would have on it?
What?
It'd have a little silver lock right there.
Right on. Right on. Oh my goodness. Well, Mick, we're gonna have you back, the full you, not just your head. And hopefully, if anybody out there is listening and you have a convention, please bring Mick Strawn to your convention so that he can be awesome, because he's got really good points and he has so influential in imagery for not only the Nightmare films, but in everything he's worked on. And all you have to do is look on his resume on IMDb and you will see this impressive list of projects that he has under his belt. So, Mick, do you have a favorite quote from any of the Nightmare films that you can remember at all?
Oh yeah.
Would you be able to
Absolutely.
say it right now?
It's not a quote from Freddy though.
All right, go for it. It's great.
It's Chuck Russell asking Roy Wagner on the set of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 when we were in the church scene, or when we were in the scene with the nun hidden back in the building, hidden inside of the nunnery, and Chuck turns to Roy and says, "So what's the motivation? What's the motivation of this box over here? I don't understand that." And Roy Wagner walks up and goes, "The motivation is I'm hiding a 5K behind that." That has always been my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street 3 quote.
Oh, that wins. This interview wins all other Nightmare on Elm Street related interviews ever.
I'm glad you guys had a great time, and
Thank you, Mick.
yeah, I'll come back anytime.
That was
so good.
amazing. That made my entire life. I have never seen or read or anything about A Nightmare on Elm Street that even comes close to that interview with Mick. I mean, whoa.
Man, it just blew me away. I know that, like, you and I both were texting each other while we were on mute because we were laughing so hard at his stories. Like, just could not breathe.
And you know, we were laughing and we were trying to keep it so that we could not interrupt him talking, like, oh my God. And I mean, just imagine him and Robert talking.
Oh my God, that would be like a 2-hour documentary in itself.
We're going to have this panel for 30 minutes. It's going to feature Mick and Robert and ends up lasting like 2 hours. But you know what? Everybody walks away with, you know, their minds blown and a gray streak on the wrong side of their head.
Can I just say how excited I am that we kind of got confirmation about why Nancy's gray streak flipped? You know, and that there was a committee.
There's a freaking committee. Put that on your resume, the committee for Nancy Thompson's hair. But at the same time, you know, it's the fact that it's a full committee, and even though they had other concerns about how she looked, the fact that the streak was still on the right side just cracks me up.
Cracks me up.
God. Oh, geez. Well, Nightmare fans, we have a lot of other Elm Street guests lined up. I'm thinking about publishing the list of people that are moving forward. It's Elm Street for like the next month or so. I think we might have 1 week break, so there's an opening for who knows what. We'll come up with it. We'll be like Mick. We'll just glue some Hot Wheels together and come up with a really fantastic idea.
We'll just wing it.
We'll wing it. Yeah, we'll go for it. Here we go. So thanks, guys, for tuning in, and happy Freddy Krueger Friday. We hope you have a really excellent weekend, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.